What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. Today, I got 11 players that I think we should be stashing during NFL training camp, maybe because of storylines for other players on their NFL rosters or just beat reporters talking about how these players are having really good springs so far. So I got a lot of players that we can talk about. Amongst all of these guys, they're going to range from about 30% availability in those sleeper dynasty leagues, and I think the deepest cut we have has about 70% availability across sleeper leagues. So that is definitely going to be a wide range of outcomes for you guys. Hopefully you find somebody in this video that you can stash on your roster, no matter the league size or how deep your rosters are. But without wasting any more time, let's hop right into today's video and let's start talking about my first stash. All right, so the first player I want to talk about in today's video is going to be Oronde Gadsden II. He is the rookie tight end for the Los Angeles Chargers. When you look over on Keep Trade Cut, he's currently being ranked as the tight end 37 on that website. That is the 256th overall player, and he's available right now in about 31% of dynasty leagues. Now, he's going to be the guy who is the least available of all of the guys we talk about today, and I did talk about this player as a potential UDFA pickup that you should be prioritizing after your rookie drafts there earlier this year. I think it was in about May when I made that video. So he's been a player we've been very excited about. And ever since I made that video, the drumbeat for Oronde Gadsden has only gotten louder and louder. You look at what has happened since then. He's been very quickly impressing those Chargers coaches. Obviously, he was a player that they traded up for in the NFL draft, so they already had some high expectations for him. But offensive coordinator Greg Roman has talked about how much he likes Gadsden and how he thinks he can be a weapon in the receiving game here. And then even his tight end coach has talked about how he reminds him of Darren Waller. Obviously, this is a player where we like the athletic profile. He is a wide receiver turned tight end, so you'd like to see that from a receiving standpoint as well. But I think this is a player who maybe won't end up the tight end one week one for the Los Angeles Chargers. But I do think that if he goes out and has a really good training camp, he's going to be a player who's going to be in contention for receiving opportunities in this offense. And he's a player that I would definitely be stashing because there is an outright chance here that he does win that job over time, even if it's towards the end of the year. And I think he has the athletic profile where if he was to start games for the Chargers, he could be very fantasy football relevant. And the fact that he's still 31% available is a little bit crazy to me because I don't think he should be on any waiver wires right now, just based off of the buzz that he has been getting. Let's talk about my second guy. It's going to be Tahj Brooks, running back for the Cincinnati Bengals. He is right now valued as the running back 66 over on Keep Trade Cut. That's the 241st overall player, and he's available still in about 32% of dynasty leagues. This is another player that I've kind of been pumping up this offseason so far. Talked about him as a player that you should be prioritizing late in rookie drafts. But this is also a player that the Bengals drafted in the 6th round, and they don't really have a lot of depth on this roster behind Chase Brown, who is going to be the bona fide week one starter. That is absolutely going to happen. I think he's going to be the guy to own in Cincinnati for the rest of the year. But that said, Zach Moss, Samaje Perine, Tahj Brooks, that's the backfield that you're looking at here to compete for the RB2 job as the potential handcuff behind Chase Brown. Now, this is also a player that checked a lot of the boxes as a prospect. He had a ton of rushing production there in college at Texas Tech. He did enough in the receiving game as well to prove that he is a capable receiver. So I think right now, just looking at this depth chart, Tahj Brooks is my favorite to have the highest ceiling as the backup to Chase Brown. And the fact that he's still available in 32% of leagues means that he needs to be picked up and at least thrown onto your taxi squads to see what happens during the training camp, preseason, early season type of process here, just to see if he can get some touches in this backfield. Because if he does, or if there is an injury to Chase Brown, somebody's going to be relevant. And I think Tahj Brooks, like I said, has the highest upside. Moving on to our next player here, it's going to be running back Miles Sanders for the Dallas Cowboys. Currently, Keep Trade Cuts running back 84. That's the 320th player off the board, and he's available in 36% of dynasty leagues. Just like the lack of competition that we have there in Cincinnati, there's also an even larger lack of competition here in Dallas because they don't have a bona fide starter. We do believe it's going to be Javonte Williams, and I do like Jaden Blue, the rookie that they drafted, because he has some PPR appeal in dynasty leagues, but really there's nobody here who has established themselves as the true number one in this backfield. Now, new head coach Brian Schottenheimer, he's been very non-committal to a running back so far. He's even said things like he wants to see how this backfield unfolds during training camp and during the preseason, just to see what these guys do once they start getting some reps. So to me, that means he doesn't know who the starter is, even if he has a hunch as to who it might be. This is still very much an open competition. And since that quote from Brian Schottenheimer, we've also had reports of potentially Jaden Blue being quote unquote borderline lazy. That is what a former coach has said about Jaden Blue. And we've also had Miles Sanders getting reports that he's been running with the ones there in early spring practices. So I think just the fact that this is an open competition, obviously I do lean Javonte Williams and Jaden Blue as the guys who are the most likely to get these starting reps for this team. But I think this is the cheapest option that you can possibly put, maybe outside of Phil Maffa, in this backfield that has an opportunity to gather some touches here in this backfield. So I'm going to take the shot here. Good offense. We do project Dallas to be pretty good, and Miles Sanders is very cheap. You can get him off of some waiver wires. So add him to your team and see what happens over the course of the next couple of weeks. Let's go to our next player. It's going to be Jaylin Lane, wide receiver for the Washington Commanders. This is a player who is wide receiver 55 over on Keep Trade Cut, the 272nd overall player, and he is available in 36% of Dynasty leagues right now. Now, obviously the Commanders, they used a 4th round pick to add him to this roster. There is going to be some things about his profile that you like. The main one that I like is the 9.56 RAS score that he had. You like to see a high RAS score because it does translate to athleticism at the NFL level, and that is definitely an attribute that does contribute to NFL success. So that's something I like to see. However, the reason that we're stashing Lane here is not anything to do with Jaylin Lane himself, but it's more to do with star wide receiver for the Washington Commanders, Terry McLaurin, who's currently in a contract dispute with the team. Now, we will know whether or not Terry McLaurin is going to show up to training camp by the time that this video is releases, but at the time of this recording, it is being rumored that Terry McLaurin may or may not show up to training camp, and if he's not there, it could open up some early opportunity during training camp for Jaylin Lane to get some more reps. Now, like I said, this regime, they did draft him in the NFL draft. He's also going to be competing with guys like Luke McCaffrey, Noah Brown, and even guys like KJ Osborne, so it's still an open competition, and if you want to pick up any of those players, that's fine with me. If you're maybe a Luke McCaffrey guy who would rather just take a shot on him, I think any of these guys have the opportunity to maybe gather some touches here behind Deebo Samuel, who is going to be the #1 wide receiver in camp if Terry is not on the field. But either way, some of these Washington wide receivers need to be picked up and stashed just in the off chance that something happens here with Terry McLaurin. Moving on to my next wide receiver, I want to talk about Jermain Burton for the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a player who is the wide receiver 103 on Keep Trade Cut, the 290th overall player, and he is also available in 36% of Dynasty leagues. Now, the start of Jermain Burton's career has been very rocky. This is a player who had the talent on film, but there was a lot of off-the-field character concerns with Jermain Burton, and he really didn't play as a rookie. He got in some legal issues. There's really even quotes coming out from the Cincinnati Bengals saying that he hadn't even earned a roster spot going into this offseason, but they did give him a second chance here to kind of go back into his second training camp of his NFL career and earn a role on this roster. Now, since then, they have given him that second chance. There have been reports from Zach Taylor saying that he's doing a good job in camp. We've had some things talking about Jermain Burton's effort, how he's just spending a little bit more time in the building. And even though these reports are a little bit hard to trust because there is so much history here with off of the field character concerns from Jermain Burton, it's hard to deny the talent of Jermain Burton too, who had a lot of fans in last year's draft cycle. So I think Jermain Burton is a player that I would be picking up, holding on to right now just through training camp to see what happens if the good reports keep coming out, because this is an offense that's going to throw the football a ton. We've had T. Higgins battle with injuries before. Andre Yoshevach is the guy that I would say is the wide receiver 3 right now, but I still think that is still fairly an open competition. So make sure you pick up Burton, see what happens through camp. Maybe we get some more positive reports, and if not, you can cut the guy, because I do think if there is any character concerns or off the field things that do happen, it's going to be done. It's already on a second chance. So, pick up Burton and let's see what happens. Let's go to our next guy. It's going to be running back Damien Martinez for the Seattle Seahawks. This is a player who is the running back 77 on Keep Trade Cut, the 283rd overall player, and he's available in 41% of Dynasty leagues. Now, Damien Martinez was a player that I liked during my pre-draft process. He fell a lot further in the NFL draft than I thought he was going to. I thought he was a very well-rounded running back. Kind of reminded me a little bit of a guy like James Conner, but he did end up on the Seattle Seahawks there in the 7th round, and he goes to a team that is going to prioritize the run game, even if it's a crowded backfield in front of him of Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker III. Now, the main reason why I'm picking up Damien Martinez and stashing him right now is because Kenneth Walker has been dealing with an ankle injury since spring practices, and he's still limited right now at this time of this recording, where he's dealing with that ankle injury still. He has never been a player that has been fully healthy really for the majority of his career. It seems like he's always dealing with injury. And with this staff a little bit more focused on wanting to establish the run and having a running back room where they can rely on some of these guys, if Kenneth Walker is not available, or if he, plays through the ankle injury and then re-injures it to where he does have to miss time in the preseason or early on in the season, I do think Damien Martinez could get some run. And like I said, I liked him in the pre-draft process. If he gets on the football field, I think he has the talent to at least carve out a little bit of a role in this offense alongside Zach Charbonnet, who would be the primary running back. Let's move on to another wide receiver. I want to talk about Dyami Brown for the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is a player who is the wide receiver 98 on Keep Trade Cut, the 278th overall player, but he's available in nearly 50% of your dynasty leagues. That's coming in at 49%, but nearly 50% of your dynasty leagues. Now, Dyami Brown has been one of my favorite late round targets in best ball drafts this summer, and the main reason behind that is because Liam Cohen coming to the Jacksonville Jaguars does give me a lot of hope that this offense is going to improve, and it is very clear to me that Dyami Brown is the number 3 wide receiver in this offense behind Bryant Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter. GM James Gladstone did give Dyami Brown a 1-year, nearly fully guaranteed $10 million contract to come in here and be one of the first signings that he made immediately as a general manager in the NFL. And he even said that Dyami Brown has a lot of untapped potential. So he obviously caught the attention of the GM here. Obviously was one of the first moves that Liam Cohen made when he was hired as well. So I do think those things considered do mean that Dyami Brown needs to be on the radar. He's probably going to be a guy who isn't super reliable for fantasy football early on. We did see back with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Liam Cohen had multiple receivers who were fantasy football relevant: Jalen McMillan, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. And so we know he's going to be very fantasy football friendly for those receivers. But also the other side of this coin is that Dyami Brown is one injury away, either Brian Thomas Jr. or Travis Hunter, to where he is going to be very fantasy football relevant in this offense, and an offense that we think is ascending. So he's a player I would be picking up, putting on the back end of my roster. You're probably not going to start him. You're probably not even thinking of playing him early on, but if an injury happens, they've invested the money, they've talked good about him, and he's going to be an improving offense with lots of opportunity in front of him as well. So I definitely like him as a stash here at the beginning of the season. Moving on to another wide receiver, let's talk about Jacob Cowing for the San Francisco 49ers. This is a player who is the wide receiver 111 on Keep Trade Cut, the 310th player overall in their rankings, and he is available in 51% of dynasty leagues. Now, Cowing is a player that I was really interested in as a undrafted free agent last year during that rookie draft process, because I felt like he was a player who could potentially get some opportunity with guys like Brandon Ayuk holding out trying to get a contract and some of the stuff that was going on there with the San Francisco 49ers. But that said, there may be some even more opportunity here in year 2 for Cowing, because not only is Brandon Ayuk recovering from an ACL injury, starting the season off on the PUP, you also have Ricky Pearsall, who is recovering from a hamstring injury, Deebo Samuel, who has been traded to the Washington Commanders, and Jawan Jennings, the guy who broke out for them last year, holding out for a new contract and requested a trade from the team if they can't get him some more money. So it's kind of a mess for the San Francisco 49ers in their receiving room. And if guys are not showing up because of injury and or contract disputes at the beginning of training camp, somebody's going to be getting reps. And I'm going to bank that Jacob Cowing is going to be one of the guys that really has the most to gain from that lack of people in the building. We already have some offseason reports here where they did say they want to kind of give Jacob Cowing some of those gadget plays that they have manufactured for Deebo in the past. So if they're already planning on getting him a little bit more touches, even with the guys healthy, and now the guys aren't in the building, let's just see what Jacob Cowing does during training camp and during the preseason and see if he can make the most of the opportunities in front of him. And I'm willing to stash him, even if it's just temporarily until Ayuk and Pearsall and Jennings and some of this uncertainty is solved. I'm okay just stashing him temporarily because, like I said, this was a player that I liked last year, and I think he has even more opportunity in front of him today. Let's go over to the Minnesota Vikings. I want to talk about wide receiver Jalen Nailor. This is a player who's ranked as the wide receiver 109 on Keep Trade Cut. That's the 304th overall player, and he's available in 57% of your dynasty leagues. Now, Jalen Nailor, he had a couple of spike weeks last year where he scored some touchdowns and was fantasy football relevant, finishing as like a top 25 and a top 36 wide receiver in those 2 weeks. However, that was due to Jordan Addison being off the football field and not playing games for the Minnesota Vikings due to an injury that he had suffered early in the year last year. Now, the good news for Nailor is that Addison is likely a suspension candidate at the beginning of the 2025 season because of a DUI incident that he suffered last summer. That trial happened. He pleaded to a wet reckless. Don't ask me what that means. I'm not a lawyer, but I am here to tell you that he's probably going to see a suspension here in 2025. So if he's off of the football field, Jalen Nailor is the player to benefit. Now, the Vikings, they did draft Ty Felton in the NFL draft, but they've already kind of said that he's going to spend the majority of his rookie year on special teams for the Vikings, and Jalen Nailor is the player that they are confident in stepping up if Addison misses time. So I would be stashing Jalen Nailor to see if the Addison suspension hits, and when that suspension hits, if it does, see how many games that is, and then try and sell Jalen Nailor to maybe the Jordan Addison manager or somebody else in your league for a 3rd or a 4th round pick, and try and gain a little bit of value in there by buying and selling the news in your Dynasty Fantasy Football League. Going on to my 10th player, let's talk about a tight end. I want to talk about AJ Barner for the Seattle Seahawks. This is a player who's being valued as the tight end 44 on Keep Trade Cut, the 314th overall player, and he is available in 69% of your Dynasty Fantasy Football Leagues. Now, Barner had several games last year where he saw a decent amount of targets, 4 or 5 targets at the tight end position, which is enough to at least get me interested, and that was despite Noah Fant being on the football field for the Seattle Seahawks. Now, Noah Fant has been released by the Seahawks. The problem is they drafted Elijah Arroyo as well in the NFL draft. And while I fully expect Arroyo to be the tight end that you want to own here in Seattle, it's definitely not a 0% chance that a guy like Barner could come into training camp, have some good opportunity in front of him, go out, impress coaches again in year 2 of his NFL career, and maybe there's an Arroyo injury, or maybe he just has a very unimpressive type of training camp, and they do lean early on in the year with AJ Barner. Like I said, Arroyo's the guy to own, but it's a non-zero chance that Barner is relevant, so I would pick him up as a speculative ad, and maybe something happens where he can be relevant, because outside of Jackson Smith and Jigba, and even Cooper Kupp, who I think in himself has some yellow flags and some orange flags for his production here for the Seahawks, there's nobody else really here that's going to be in the receiving game, so somebody's going to be relevant. It's probably Arroyo, but pick up Barner as a speculative guy just in case, if you have the bench space. And now my last and final player, I'm going to give you guys a quarterback for those super flex leagues. I'm talking Zach Wilson for the Miami Dolphins. He's ranked right now as the quarterback 50 on Keep Trade Cut, the 363rd overall player in their rankings, and he is available in 72% of Dynasty leagues. Now, it is no secret that Zach Wilson should be labeled as a bust for the New York Jets. The thing is, we're just 1 year removed now from a former bust of the New York Jets, Sam Darnold, going to a new team that had a good offense, a good play caller, was just a change of environment for Sam Darnold, and he kind of saw an NFL career revival there in Minnesota. I'm not saying that Zach Wilson is going to be this year's Sam Darnold, but if you were trying to point or try and solve the puzzle to figure out who possibly could be, I think Zach Wilson is a candidate for that description, at least here. Because when you look at Tua Tagovailoa and his injury history, that's a player that is definitely a risk himself if and when, probably more so when than if, Tua Tagovailoa misses time. Zach Wilson's going to be the next guy up, and this is going to be the best NFL offense that he has been in, with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, and Mike McDaniel calling plays. So I think there is a argument here that you want to pick up Zach Wilson, and maybe it's just a leverage play if you don't have Tua Tagovailoa on your football team. But I think the reality is there's a chance that he has some rushing upside here that does translate to fantasy football points in a better offense. And if you have Tua Tagovailoa, this is a no-brainer. You have to pick him up and stash him because you might need him at some point here during the NFL season. So there you have it, folks. That is 11 players that I am stashing heading into NFL training camp. A lot of these guys are low risk, so you can pick them up, hold them for a couple of weeks, see what news comes out. If nothing happens, cut them and be ready to move on to the NFL season. But I will say, if you did enjoy today's video, make sure you hit the like button for me. It is the best free way to show this channel some support. Also, make sure you guys are subscribed to this YouTube channel, trying to get to 10K by the end of the NFL season. And last but not least, make sure you go join our free Discord, because we are in there helping you guys with your Dynasty Fantasy Football teams 24/7, 365. And there's a dope group of people in there, a whole community of people that want to talk some fantasy football with you. So make sure you go join that. Like I said, it's free, so there is no risk in doing that. With all of that out of the way, I have nothing else for you guys today. So I'll see you on our next episode. But until then, peace out.